You are listening to Resilient Life, the podcast where we explore the power of resiliency. I'm Nikita Ross. It is my hope that listening to this podcast will give you the tools to connect with and increase your resiliency. So join me on this adventure of self-discovery and self-love. Thank you, Richard, for agreeing to be on Resilient Life, the podcast where we talk about areas of life that we can increase our resiliency or we have experienced resiliency. I have been awkwardly introduced several times, and so it is always my preference to have each guest introduce themselves. So, Richard, if you can tell us your full name or as much as your government name you would feel comfortable sharing, and your profession.
Hey, absolutely. So my name is Richard Franco, and currently I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Phoenix Union High School District. But I guess most importantly, I'm a dog dad.
You're a dog dad. How many dogs do you have?
I have two beautiful Great Danes, Layla and Bella.
I think that's awesome. I'll start off by asking you, Richard, what is resilience to you?
So when I think about resilience, actually what I did is I looked up what is the opposite of resilience so that I could get kind of a better feel for what I was trying, because my original definition of resilience is like a response, like how you respond to a given situation. Whenever I looked up the opposite is inflexible, rigid, or fragile. And so where that kind of helped me hone in on my definition is I think it's a response to a situation that makes us better. So depending on what happens to us in life, our resilience is not only that we got through it, but that we now become better on the other side for having gone through it. There's a lot of things that happen to us that can cause pain. There's grief, there's sorrow, there are things that are outside of our control that happen to us. And your resilience, in my opinion, is your ability to get through it and become better on the other side, never having forgotten about what happened to you, but really growing from, learning from, and being able to be better for having gone through it.
I like that. I think that's a very encompassing definition. I really like that. So, with that definition that you just gave in mind, do you consider yourself to be resilient?
Situationally, I would say so. I'd say recently I've done a lot of work on myself as a person, being more mindful, really trying to hone in on who I am. And I think that comes with age. Like you get a little bit older, you start really focusing on like, what is this life about? What are the things that I am doing that don't serve me, and what are things that I could be doing that could serve me better? And as I've gone through that, I've realized that, resiliency is a critical component of the person that I am today, but also, as I mentioned before, it's very situationally. There are things that affect us in different ways, and our resiliency is never time centered. I've heard you talk about that before, where it's like it's not about how long you go through it; it's about what happens on the end of it. So, you're to answer that question, I think that I'm resilient. I'm resilient situationally, but with the intent of becoming resilient in all situations. That's the goal, I would say.
I think that's a very insightful answer. I love, and I've never thought about it as being resilient situationally. So I think I like that. You gave me something to think about. You mentioned, Richard, in your response that you wanted to be more mindful. And so I wanted to know, was there an event that triggered you wanting to be more mindful? Is it just a natural progression of aging? Can you speak more about what you think about when you think of being mindful?
Yeah, so I think as we all get older, we have a sense of wanting to become more one with our body and our mind. But I had some health things that had really impacted my life and my way of being. I wasn't in the most healthy physical, mental, or emotional state. I was really kind of going through the motions in life, and I wasn't really taking control over the things that I had control over. And so, with some of those health issues, I realized that I had to take control. I had to make some changes, and then that, I think started a ripple effect of me then looking at other aspects of my life that could be improved. Not only just my health, but my spirit, my and my connectedness with myself. And so those things all kind of rippled together, built on one another, and got to the point now where I do my best to focus on mindfulness and meditate and become more connected with myself, more present and in the moment. And so those things really all fed into each other. They only recently started, maybe in the last year or so, getting more and more serious for me because I've realized as I go through them just how much better my life is for doing those things. So that's kind of where it came from.
I love that. I want to commend you because as humans, it's not always the easiest choice to make a big life change, even sometimes when we're faced with obstacles as far as like maybe a health concern or any kind of event that happens. We don't always take that hard path of making big changes in our lives. And so I really want to commend you on doing that. And I hope that you are proud of yourself. I hope that you give yourself credit for the progress that you made, for the fact that you even wanted to do this and that you're doing it. Is that, do you feel proud of yourself for that? Do you acknowledge the progress that you've made over, as you stated, the last year?
So, I mean, thank you for saying that and reminding me always of those kinds of things. Like that's such an important piece of our journey in life is realizing the little milestones. They're not always the biggest ones, but the little ones. I think I really had a choice. I came to a choice that either I was going to take control over my life or I was going to completely lose it. I wasn't going to be in control. And I realized that like I had to take some concrete steps. Those things then, as I mentioned, kind of forced me to rethink everything in my life, the way that I was handling my friendships, my relationships, everything that kind of was going on. It sparked and triggered me looking into all aspects of my life. So, to answer your question, what's been really nice is seeing the incremental growth in all the different areas. So, like getting to a point where I can meditate for 10 minutes without my mind wandering, or being able to bring my mind back without getting upset with myself. Like those kinds of things are huge wins in the grand scheme of where I started from. And that's just in the meditation, being able to work out for longer than I could before and not get winded, or, being able to walk my dogs for a mile and not feel exhausted after that mile's over. Like those things are huge wins. And I think the more that we remind ourselves of those wins, that builds on our resiliency to that point, because it shows us that we're better now than we were before, and that growth is really the most important thing that we should be celebrating on this path.
Yeah, and in seeing the growth encourages us to continue to grow and to continue to stretch ourselves. I could not have said that any better, Richard. That was perfectly said. Thank you so much for that response, that very
Yeah.
thoughtful, thought provoking response. What brings you joy?
Well, I mentioned before my pups. My dogs have been incredibly important to me. Whenever I got Layla, I was working in Santan Valley. I was living alone. A lot of my friends were an hour away. I was a little bit removed from my friend group, from my family, um, and that can be a kind of a lonely place. I had people that were close to me, close by, but not like those deep relationships that I have um, with others, besides my mentor and a couple others, like I said. So whenever I got my first home, the first thing I was going to do was get a dog. Like I was going to get a dog. There was always a sense inside of me that that was a piece of my life that I wanted to have. Once I got my first house and I wasn't renting anymore and I was able to control my own destiny a little bit more, I immediately went to that rescue and got Layla. And I would say the biggest thing that she's done as far as bringing me joy is dogs, pets, animals are a constant reminder of what being present looks like. The dog is never worried about the next thing that's going to come or stressed out about the future. or depressed about the past. Like dogs are always present. They are always in the moment of whatever's going on right then. Um, so kind of learning from her to be more mindful and be present. And also, if you've ever been around dogs or animals, you realize that they forgive. They forgive and forget immediately. Something could happen with a dog. You accidentally step on their tail or something happens and there's an initial reaction and then there's a moment. Within 5 minutes, they've completely forgotten, they've moved on. And so the thing that brings me the most joy is the love that she gives me, the love that I'm able to give her, and that connectedness, but also like the life lessons of forgiving, of being present, of caring for whatever it is that you're looking out for, whether it be family or friends or whatever. So I would say that's a big one that brings me joy. Another thing that really brings me joy is music. I used to make music. I used to be more of a musician. Now I enjoy it. But one thing that I do find is that anytime I'm doing something, there's music on. There's some kind of music going that uh, just supports the higher vibration of energy that I think a lot of us long for and look for. So I'd say those are kind of the two big ones that bring me joy is my dogs and music.
I like that you talked about the things that bring you joy. I want to know, what is the healthiest thing that you've done for yourself?
The healthiest thing that I've done for myself is meditate. And it's something that is very personal, but it's something that is invaluable to me in so many ways. Like it has really changed my life in so many ways. That mindfulness, that peacefulness, that calm. Um, we are inundated with thoughts, and there's this really great book called Just a Thought that talks about how you should never take your thoughts personally because they're not personal. Your brain's job is to produce thoughts. That's why it was, that's what it is. That's its essence, is to produce thoughts. And not all those thoughts are always helpful. They're not always beneficial. They're not always very caring of ourselves. And sometimes they can be detrimental. And um, if we don't hear them for what they are, just a thought, if we don't hear them for something, if we hear them as being too strong within our psyche, it can really bring us down. And that's from within. It doesn't even have to be someone from the outside putting you down if you're putting yourself down. So what I have found is that through meditation, you can quiet that down, but also you start to recognize it for what it is. You start to recognize it for something that's just, it's either there to protect you or it's there because its job is to create thoughts. And so seeing it for what it is, you can then, thank it, appreciate it for protecting you and doing what it needs to do, and then allow it to go without it kind of eating you up. Because I think there's a lot of people that go through that, where your own thoughts can really spiral you and eat you up, and it doesn't have to be an external influence that's coming in. So what I've learned through meditation, the first thing that you learn is that your brain's going to not stop. Your brain's going to keep going, and that's okay. You're going to sit there for a while and you're going to be trying to be quiet and you're going to try to be still, but your brain's going to go. It's going to take off in a direction, or it's going to throw an intrusive thought or something like that. It's the recognizing when your mind's doing it, bringing yourself back to center, bringing yourself back to peace, quieting it down again for however long that lasts, and realizing that that's okay. Like not beating yourself up about it, not being upset. My mom talks to me a lot about how she says she can't meditate because her brain's just going and going and going. And I always tell her that the point of meditation isn't to make that stop, it's to gain control over it. That's the whole point of meditation, is to get to the point where you recognize that it's happening and you bring yourself back. So through that practice of slowing the mind, calming the mind, I have found great peace in that. Where now it's like a little bit of a challenge for myself to see if I can go longer than the last time between my thought. And so, you know, being mindful and meditating and calming my brain has been the most important thing I've ever done for myself, because it also made me realize that I have control over this. Like, I'm I'm ultimately the one in the driver's seat. I'm not the victim in this situation of my own psyche. Like, I control what thoughts come in. Well, I don't necessarily control what thoughts come in. I control what thoughts I assign value to. So if there's a thought that comes in that doesn't serve me, that is not valuable, then I'm going to let that go. And I'm going to, acknowledge that it's there, and I'm going to let it to go. If there's something that comes in that's way more beneficial for me, then I'm going to follow those things. But meditation in that mindfulness journey really, really has helped me hone in on who I am, become more connected with myself, but also it's created a filter for what thoughts matter and what thoughts don't.
I love that. I was going to ask you because meditation seems to be popular now, where a lot of people I've seen, and maybe it's the circle I'm in, but I hear meditation a lot. And I was going to ask, what do you mean when you say come back to center and bring yourself back? But I think you did a fantastic job, because when I first started trying to meditate, and I feel like I'm still in that phase where I'm still trying to be a better meditator or meditate longer. I had similar things that your mom described. And I didn't understand. People said to me, like, oh, just bring yourself back. And I was like, what does that even mean? But I feel like you did a really good job of explaining what it means. It's like those thoughts will be there, but not assigning them value or not following them, but just acknowledging, like, oh, I see you thought, and then just coming back. And then, oh, I see you thought, and not beating yourself up. I think you did a fantastic job of describing um, meditation. And again, I think it'll vary slightly for everyone. And I don't think there is one perfect way to meditate. And so I don't want anyone to think that, oh, this is the way, the only way, and then beat themselves up for not doing it that way. But I think the general principle of like just being present, meaning I'm acknowledging, but I'm not allowing it to take over. I'm not following that thought. I'm not giving that thought too much power. I think you did of explaining that. So thank you. I love that. Thank you. That was actually very helpful for me as well, because as I told you, I also struggle with meditating at times. So thank you for that explanation. It's really good. How long did
Yeah,
it
of
take
course.
you to be able to get to that place where you could meditate for 10 minutes? Because something else I struggle with is I still struggle with being able to sit still for 10 whole minutes and meditate, meaning my mind. Because eventually, I think the goal for me would be that I want to just have silence and not have those thoughts pop up. And so, right now, I struggle to get to 10 minutes. And so, what was that process like for you to be able to get to 10 minutes?
Well, it's still in process, and I still struggle with it just like everyone else does. One thing that I found is that whenever you do any kind of guided meditations, pull up YouTube and search for a guided meditation and do one that fits whatever time frame you're looking for, whether, they have some that are, a minute. Whatever it is, you're going to find a common theme in guided meditations is them describing whatever state you're in as perfect. Whatever you're thinking about right now, that's perfect. If you're thinking, because they'll tell you, you should think about being in the forest, or you should think about being next to a river. Whatever river you're sitting next to, it's perfect. Whatever place you're sitting next to, it's perfect. And it's kind of ingrained in your mind that whatever's happening is okay and accepted. And that's what I think is really like the key with meditation, is realizing that it's okay and accept it. And maybe I haven't gotten there yet. I have not gotten to a full 10-minute session where my mind doesn't wander. And maybe there is something there that I'll hit that one day where I'm fully in like that. What I find with my 10-minute meditations, my 15-minute meditations, is recognizing how often I bring myself back to what you had just said. Like, we talk about bringing ourselves back. All that means is that I notice that my mind is now thinking about my job, or my mind is now thinking about my dogs, or my mind is now thinking about my life or my worries or whatever, whenever I told myself I was going to be intentional about focusing on whatever my meditation's on. Realizing, oh, my mind's thinking about this. Okay, thank you. And then come back and being okay with it, and being okay that, that only lasted 10 seconds and my mind was already gone. And then coming back and realizing in 10 seconds your mind's gone again. And like the whole practice is realizing that you've left and bringing yourself back. That's the practice, is bringing yourself back, bringing yourself back. And as many times as you have to do it, it's perfect. That's exactly how many times you're supposed to do it. And so those have been like the keys for me with getting through 10 minutes. Because 10 minutes, I don't think sounds like a lot to people when you think about anything else in your life. A 10-minute jog, a 10-minute walk, a 10-minute whatever. But when it comes to meditation, to complete silence, to closing your mind down, 10 minutes feels like an eternity. And so what I've found is that grace, allowing myself to come and go, but always with the intention of bringing myself back to center, has been the thing that's helped me increase the amount of time. This morning, I did an hour-long guided meditation. My mind was not centered the whole time. I was not quiet the whole time. Everything was not perfect. There was not bells and whistles going off inside my brain and this deep sense of rooted connection to the universe. What it was it was an opportunity for me to sit alone, be okay with being alone, be okay with being in my own thoughts and my eyes closed within myself, being comfortable in my own skin, and allowing myself to walk through this journey with the guide, where they're taking me on this journey. And then my mind's producing it. My mind's then creating the setting and the atmosphere for what we were going through. And we were going through some manifestations, which was great. But that's really what this is you get more and more time the more that you give yourself the grace to come and go as you naturally do.
Thank you for that, Richard. What is that? You've told me the healthiest thing you've done for yourself. You've told me about how meditating was that. And I love that. I think once we get to a place of whatever we choose to utilize as our tool for helping us get to peace and understanding, it increases our resiliency because we are better able to handle life challenges. So I love that meditation is your tool. And I think everyone is free to choose whatever their tool is for helping them find peace, to feel more healthy, so that when we do face challenges, because they cannot be avoided, we are able to better recover from the challenges. With that in mind, of what you've done for yourself, what is the nicest or healthiest thing you've done for someone else?
I'll start with this. No matter what we do for other people, we get something out of it. It could be financial, that I'm going to do this job for you and you're going to pay me some money, or I'm going to do this or that. It could be that we're gaining friendship from it. I realize, as I think about this, that like no matter what it is that we do, we're getting something from it. And so honoring that and thinking about the things that you get from doing for others. I go back to teaching. So becoming a teacher, it was my job, but it was also a calling because I saw myself in a lot of the students that I had. I saw them as being a person that was at one point in my same shoes at that age. And so when I look about like doing things for others, that's a very concrete example of being in the classroom, teaching, working with people, helping them hone their craft, being a facilitator for their knowledge and helping them get to, wherever it is, they want to go. For a specific thing, I would say recently, the work that I've done with my mom is something that's really been near and dear to my heart. My mom is a very important person to me, and she and my dad as well, as they have gotten older and they're retired now. The best thing that I realize that we can do is spend time together. So I just recently got to spend a couple days with my mom. She got to come down and visit me at my house and spend the nights with me. My dad comes down on his time and we do different things, working around the house, or he builds things. As I was thinking about this, back to the original point, like the nicest thing that I can do for them is spend time with them, spend quality time, be present with them. But also I get a lot out of that as well. Like, and honoring that, yes, I'm also getting something from that. It's not truly, a selfless act. Like I'm also getting the benefits of spending quality time with them and also getting the benefits of that, dopamine rush of being able to do some cool things with them. So I would say honoring that it's connected to what we also get in return, but also doing those things intentionally with the people you care about most or the people that you feel could benefit the most.
So let's say you've given very good examples of your life, and thank you so much for sharing very intimate details about your life. let's say someone is listening and they're like, oh, I'm not to a place where I can meditate. I am really struggling with whatever is happening and going on in their lives. We all have our challenges. What advice would you give them to increase their resiliency? What are some tools that you could think of if they are just at the beginning and they're trying to figure out, how do I become more resilient? How do I do that? What advice would you have?
So it's a question. And the question that you ask yourself is, what do I have control over? When you realize what it is that you have control over, and it may not be a lot, there may not be, you may feel like it's nothing. You may say, I have control over nothing right now, and that's fine. Asking yourself that first question, what do I have control over, is going to allow you to take a first step. Because we focus, a lot of us, everyone, I do, everyone, we focus on the things we have no control over. I don't have a control over, one thing I don't have control over is what other people think about me. I don't have any control over that. I have control over how I act towards them, and maybe my actions will influence those things, but I have no control over what people think about me. And that's okay. I have control over me. I have control over what I do, what I say, how I act. And I now, as that foundation, now I can do something. But I think it's overwhelming if you're sitting out there and you have a lot going on in your life that may be negative or may feel negative or could feel, really heavy on you. Stepping back and asking myself, taking inventory, what do I have control over? And if in that moment you literally have no control over anything except for yourself, you have control over that. So let's start there. And then, what are the other steps? Maybe you have control over whether you do X, Y, or Z. Okay, so now you have control over that. And then you're going to start realizing that you have control over everything that you need to in order to be happy. But that's going to come with time. That's going to come with time, and it's going to start with the very first fundamental, even making like a list. One thing I talk about a lot is pro and con lists. We've talked about that before, is like you make your pro and your con list, and then I always go to, what do I have control over on this list? What are the things that I can impact today and do something about? So I would say start with that question and go from there.
I absolutely love that response. You don't know this, but I actually teach a course in resiliency and increasing individual resilience. And we talk about what can I control and to focus exactly on what you can control. And the
Nice.
approach that we take, very similar to everything you said, the approach we take is, the thing I can control are my thoughts, which leads to me controlling my actions, which leads to me being able to control what's occurring around me, like within my immediate proximity. As you said, I cannot control how other people act. I can control how I respond to other people's actions. And so I think that is really big, because a lot of times when we are struggling with feeling like we're out of control. That fear, I fear that I'm out of control. I fear that this is going to happen. I fear that I have no control. And I love the thought of bringing it back to what can I control, and that's me. And it starts with my thoughts, which then goes to my words, which then goes to my actions. And I love that. And I actually teach that very same lesson. And I love that you and I are aligned on that. And I think that is one of the best things to help a person feel empowered in a moment where they may be feeling powerless and overwhelmed, is to just breathe and say, what about this moment is under my control? And a thing that I also learned from one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Eckhart Tolle, is also, when I'm thinking about what can I control, I also have to stop and say, what are my thoughts telling me occurring? And so being able to just breathe and say, okay, I just burn the eggs. And then immediately I have a really big reaction, instead of just pausing and saying, I burn the eggs. Okay, it's not the end of the world. I may have to clean this pot and or throw this pot away, but it's not the end of the world. But sometimes we create like this whole narrative of, I burn the eggs. I know how to cook eggs. How did I burn the eggs? And beating ourselves up. And so I love that, controlling your thoughts and thinking about what you can control. I think that was absolutely a phenomenal answer. That is everything that I have for you, Richard. Do you have any closing statements about resiliency that I did not ask or I did not get to? Is there anything else you want to share? I thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest. Do you have any closing statements?
I want to commend you a little bit for doing what you're doing with this podcast. I know it took a leap of faith on your part to do this. Uh, I know that this is something that you're passionate about and something that you're wanting to spread out into the world. So I do want to just give you kudos for that. And anyone that does listen to this or hears this, I hope it brings you some peace, some joy, some happiness, gives you a couple tips and pointers. And just thank you so much for allowing me to be one of the guests on your.
Thank you so much, Richard, for being here. Thank you for your very thoughtful and thought-provoking answers. I hope this episode gave you some tools to connect with and increase your resiliency. I'm proud of you. Let's keep up the momentum. Follow Resilient Life on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube at Resilient Life Podcast. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.